preceptor, and husband. You are everything to me. Thakur Bhaktivinod says, O Kana, please hear me. O Lord of Radha, you are my life and soul. I guess there's no one here to play drama. Oh, Goki can play. Can you play me that now? Manasa deho geho jo kichu mor arpilu tua pare Nanda Kishore Manasa deho geho. Manasa deho geho jo kichu mor arpilu tua pare Nanda Kishore. Sampare vipare jivane marane dai mama gela tua o pada barane. Sampare vipare jivane marane dai mama gela tua opada barane. Doi mama gela tua opa Maro vira kobi jo icha tohara nitya dasa prati tua adhikara. Maro vira kobi jo icha tohara nitya dasa prati tua adhikara. Janma obimoe icha jarito bhakta grihe jani janma homo. Janma obimo icha jarito bhakta grihe jani janma homo. Icha jarito Kita janma ho jata tuadasa bahir mukha brahma janme nahi ash. Kita janma ho jata tuadas Kita janma ho jata tuadas bahir mukha brahma janme nahi ash. Bhukti mukti spriha vihina je bhakta labhaite tako sanganurakta. Labhaite tako Bhukti mukti spriha vihina je bhakta labhaite tako sanga anurakta. Janaka janani dayita tanai Prabhu Guru Pati Tuhu Sarvamoy. Prabhu Guru Pati Tuhu Sarvamoy. Janaka janani dayita tanai Prabhu Guru Pati Tuhu Sarvamoy. Bhakati vinoda koho shuno kana Radha nata tuhu hamara parana Parana Bhakati vinoda kohe shuno kana Radha nata tuhu hamara parana Manasa hare hoge ho jo kichu mon ar pilu dua pare nanda kishore Manasa de hoge ho jo kichu mon ar pilu dua pare nanda kishore Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotarasata Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotarasata Shri Shrimad Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, text number 44. Yat sa anubandhe asati deha gehe mama aham iti udha duragraha nam pumsam suduram vasataha api puryam bhajema tat te bhagavan pada abjam. Yatsanubande sati dehagehe Yatsanubandhe sati dehagehe Mamahamithyudaduragrahanam Mamahamithyudaduragrahanam Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam Yatsanubande sati dehagehe Mamahamithyudaduragrahanam Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam Yatsanubande sati dehagehe Mamahamithyudaduragrahanam Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam. Please chant. Yatsanubande sati dehage Tyudaduragrahanam Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam Yatsanubande sati dehage Mamahamithyudaduragrahanam Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam Yatsanubandhe dasati dehage Mamahamithyudaduragrahanam Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam. Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam. Yatsanubandhe sati deha gehe. Mamahamityu-daduragrahanam. Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam. Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam. Mataji. Yatsanubandhe sati deha gehe. Mamahamityu-daduragrahanam. Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam. Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam. Yatsanubandhe sati deha gehe. Mamahamityu-daduragrahanam. Pumsam suduram vasatopi puryam. Bhaje matate bhagavan padabjam. Yat, because, sa, anubhande, due to becoming entangled, asati, thus being, deha, the gross material body, gehe, in the home, mama, mine, aham, I, iti, thus, udha, great, deep, duragraha, nam, undesirable eagerness, pumsam, of persons, su, duram, far away, vasataha, dwelling, api, although, puryam, within the body, bhajema, let us worship, tat, therefore, te, your, bhagavan, O Lord, pada, abjam, lotus feet. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. O Lord, persons who are entangled by undesirable eagerness for the temporary body and kinsmen, who are bound by thoughts of mine and I, are unable to see your lotus feet, although your lotus feet are situated within their own bodies. But let us take shelter of your lotus feet. Purport. The whole Vedic philosophy of life is that one should get rid of the material encagement of the gross and subtle bodies, which only cause one to continue in a condemned life of miseries. This material body continues as long as one is not detached from the false conception of lording it over material nature. The impetus for lording it over material nature is the sense of mine and I. I am the Lord of all that I survey. So many things I possess, and I shall possess more and more. Who can be richer than I in wealth and education? I am the Master, I am God. Who else is there but me? All of these ideas reflect the philosophy of aham mama, the conception that I am everything. Persons conducted by such a conception of life can never get liberation from material bondage. But even a person perpetually condemned to the miseries of material existence can get relief from bondage if he simply agrees to hear only Krishna Katha. In this age of Kali, the process of hearing Krishna Katha is the most effective means to gain release from unwanted family affection and thus find permanent freedom in life. The age of Kali is full of sinful reactions. and people are more and more addicted to the qualities of this age. But simply by hearing and chanting of Krishna Katha, one is sure to go back to Godhead. Therefore, people should be trained to hear only Krishna Katha by all means in order to get relief from all miseries. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriutaf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosite Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yat Sanu Bhande Sati Deha Gehe Mamaha Mit Yuda Duragrahanam Pumsam Suduram Vasatopi Puryam Bhajema Tate Bhagavan Padabjam. O Lord, persons who are entangled by undesirable eagerness for the temporary body and kinsmen, and who are bound by thoughts of mine and I, are unable to see your lotus feet, although your lotus feet are situated within their own bodies. But let us take shelter of your lotus feet. We are continuing in this 5th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, titled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. And here we've been reading about and specifically hearing about the prayers here by the different demigods to the Supreme Lord. This canto itself is titled The Status Quo, which in Latin means the existing state. So the first canto, it is called Creation, and the second canto, it is titled The Cosmic Manifestation. But those first 2 cantos don't really go into as much detail about the creation as do this 3rd canto and 4th canto. The 3rd canto, as was described by devotees recently who have been giving class, talks about this conception of sarga, which is the creation. And this status quo, or this existing state, literally just means talking about how things have come into being as we see it now. And the Supreme Lord, he has just begun again, because this is not just happening once, but it happens over and over again, this process of creation. And throughout the rest of this canto, we'll see so many different things being created, so many different people being created. And through the description of the different creation and different personalities, we have all of the different stories throughout the 3rd canto. And specifically in this verse here, like I said, we're continuing these wonderful prayers by the demigods to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how wonderful is this prayer here that we're reading today. It's worshiping the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it's making this very important point that even though the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead might seem so far away, the lotus feet of the Lord are actually situated within our own bodies. And before class today, I sung this bhajan by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, titled Manasa Deho Geho. And here in the Sanskrit here, we see these 2 words, Deha and Gehe. Deha meaning the gross material body, and gehe meaning in the home. And this is exactly what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is talking about here in this song. In this first verse here, he says, "Mind, body, and family, whatever may be mine, I have surrendered at your lotus feet. In good fortune or in bad, in life or death, all my difficulties have disappeared by choosing those lotus feet of yours as my only shelter." So, in the purport that Srila Prabhupada gives on this song here by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sort of goes more into depth and more into detail of what he talks about in this purport here. Srila Prabhupada says that one should get rid of the material encagement of the gross and subtle bodies. We know that the gross body, it consists of these 8 material elements, and it's what we can physically see. And this subtle body, it consists of the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. And it's all these various things that are binding us in this material world. Srila Prabhupada says that this material mind, which we battle with every single day, it is the source of all of these different speculations that he describes here, this nature of mine and I. Thinking that I am the Lord of all that I survey, so many things that I possess, I shall possess more and more. Who can be richer than I in wealth and education? I am the master, I am God. Who is there but me? All of these ideas are conjured up by our material mind. And this deha, or which is described here as this gross material body, it implies these various different senses that we have. And these various senses are which constantly bind us in this material world. And it's constantly bewildering us to have all these different ideas that Srila Prabhupada is talking about here. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he makes this point that simply by surrendering everything to the lotus feet of Krishna, Krishna is giving him all protection. No matter what happens or what situation he's in, he's completely surrendered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'll cover sort of topics discussing all of those different things. And first, talking about the nature of this mind and these senses. Krishna talks a lot about these in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, because this is the basic foundational understanding by which we can sort of build up all these other understandings, right? It's talked about here about the topics of Krishna Katha, but if one doesn't even understand that he's not this body, but the soul that's inside of the body, and he has an eternal relationship with Krishna, he won't actually be able to understand these high topics of Krishna Katha. So this is the first beginning and essential instruction by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, talking about how these senses bewilder us. Towards the end of the 2nd chapter, Krishna says, Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipashtitaha indriyani pramatini haranti prasabam manaha. That these material senses that we have, they're constantly bewildering us. That even though we might gain some sort of knowledge, even though we might have so many different experiences in which we see that we can't gain any pleasure from these material senses that we have, still it continues to bewilder us time after time again. And we've personally had so much experience with this in our own lives that no matter, it almost seems that no matter what happens to us, before coming to Krishna consciousness at least, that we would try to, it's described this sponge, this dry sponge that you keep on trying to squeeze. Even though time and time again you may have squeezed the dry sponge, not being able to actually get anything out of it, yet you go to it again and you keep on chewing the chewed, trying to enjoy what you've already experienced we haven't been able to enjoy. And why is this important? Because Krishna also says in that 2nd chapter, Bogaishvarya prasaktanam taya parhita chetasan sam vivasayatmika buddhir samadho navidiyate. That when we're attached to this material sense enjoyment and when we're attached to these material senses, the desire for devotional service, the desire for service to Krishna, it will not come about. If we continue to remain attached to these concepts of I and mine that we've gained through interaction with our material body, our material senses, our mind, our intelligence, and our false ego, this inclination and this nature for devotional service to Krishna, it won't actually come about. And Srila Prabhupada, he gives one story, one example of this from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's this story about these different pigeons, right? So I forget their exact names, but their names are described in this story. But there is a male pigeon and there is a female pigeon. And, they fall in love and they're lovebirds, per se. When my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, is describing this story, this example, he says, these are real lovebirds, right? They're so engrossed in the bodies of one another. And off of this relationship, based off of their material bodies, they make such a nice nest. They make a wonderful facility. And where they're at in the forest, they're able to get bountiful worms or bugs or whatever birds eat. And they're able to get the nicest twigs to build a very wonderful nest. And soon after some time, they have baby birds. And these baby birds, they're very beautiful to the birds, even though to us it might seem like not the most beautiful thing. But to these birds, these baby birds are the most wonderful thing. It's the perfection of their relationship, them having these baby birds. And they go out foraging hard day in, day out, just to feed these little baby birds. I don't know if anyone's seen it practically, but it seems like the bird is always coming to and from the nest just to forage, just to find different things for the baby birds. And it almost seems like this goes on like day in and day out, every single day. And one day, along comes this hunter. And the hunter, he's basically doing the same thing as these birds. He makes his livelihood and he feeds his own family by hunting in the forest. And these baby birds, being, not exactly the most experienced with material life, they wander here and there. And the hunter, seeing the nature of these birds, he sets up his net, his trap to catch these birds. And he thinks, how easy my day will be today because I'll be able to catch these birds. So these birds, they stumble out of the nest, and lo and behold, they fall right into the net of this hunter. And this happens while the parents are away, thinking every moment, how will I feed and how will I maintain these baby birds that I have so wonderfully kept in this nest that I've so wonderfully made. And when they come back and they see the perfection of their life caught up within this net, first the mother bird, she comes back. And she's so distraught. She's in such a state of feeling in a calamitous position that she faints, and she also falls into this net of the hunter. So now pretty much the whole family is caught up within this net, except for the father bird. And he comes back to the nest, and he sees his whole family bound up within this net. Everything that he worked so hard for, and that he was so happily enjoying at one point in time, is now all taken away from him. He did everything right. He built the perfect nest. He found the perfect ladybird. He built his nest in the most perfect situation where there was ample twigs, ample food to have, seemingly no disturbances up until then. Even though he did everything right, yet his whole family is caught up within this net and it's been taken away from him. So then it's described, at least in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the father bird, being unable to handle the situation, he also falls into the net. Srila Prabhupada, though, he gives a different ending to this story also, in which my spiritual master also describes, in which the bird, seeing this situation of material life and using his intelligence, the bird, he takes sannyas. And he renounces from his family life, and using his intelligence, he's able to see the situation that he's in and finally come out of this situation. And we can practically see by this example that this is the position that we find ourselves in. We've tried so hard to build up the perfect situation in material life. Right? It's described here that this nature of thinking that I'm the Lord of all that I survey, I shall get more and more and more. We can see, and we talk to people pretty much every day, and we ask them about what they think the goal of life is. And when you actually talk to them, and people will actually come to the conclusion that, yeah, maybe getting more and more, possessing all of these different things and going through life, maybe that won't make me happy. But people, they don't even think beyond that. Even people with some little bit of intelligence, they don't come past this understanding, because they don't get this understanding that we get in Bhagavad Gita, that there's more than just this physical body and this material mind, right? If one doesn't have this understanding that we aren't this body, then there's no possible way that they can come out of this aham mama, which this concept that I am everything. There's no possible way that one can be free from this conclusion, which is why it's very important and why Krishna really stresses this, and it's his first teaching in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, that this material body and everything, this interactions with the material body that we get, the happiness and the distress, it's temporary. And we can see that the soul that's within the body, that is actually the part that's eternal. That we can see that this is the eternal nature that's within the body. It's described also in that second chapter, that this soul is changing different bodies just like the person changes clothes. The person, it remains the same, but the external covering of the body, the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego, this changes throughout our various conceptions of life. So now that we have this understanding from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, this understanding that being too attached to the results of this sense gratification, they only bewilder us, and this bewilderment, it doesn't actually bring us out of material existence, but it's actually the binding force which keeps us away from all this material existence. How do we get free from this? How do we get above this level of material understanding? And Krishna tells us also in the same chapter of Bhagavad Gita how we can become free from this. We can become free by getting this higher taste. Because just by renouncing the objects of the senses and just by renouncing the body and senses altogether, this won't actually free one from this materialistic conception. But by getting the higher taste, this is how we're actually able to come to this understanding and how we're actually practically able to free ourselves from this understanding of aham mama, that I am everything. And this is exactly what Srila Prabhupada talks about in the purport, that even a person perpetually condemned to the miseries of material existence can get relief from bondage if he simply agrees to hear only Krishna Katha. And this Krishna Katha, this topics about Krishna, Krishna's pastimes, the name, fame, glories, and the pastimes even of the devotees of Krishna, this is the higher taste that we are looking for. This Krishna Katha that's described here by Srila Prabhupada, and also what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur here is talking about in his song, this strong attachment to Krishna. It's, obviously he doesn't have this problem, but to teach us, he's giving us these songs to teach us by this example, that by simply surrendering everything to Krishna, he's able to become free from this mind, become free from this material body, become free from this home that we're so bound up to, and these kinsmen which we attach ourselves to. And this, it's also described here in this song that simply by the company of these devotees who is completely free from the desire for enjoyment or liberation, that this Srimad Bhagavatam here that we have, and these topics of Krishna Katha, like I said, it talks about Krishna, but it's also talking about the pastimes of Krishna's devotees. And by associating with Krishna through the Srimad Bhagavatam and by associating with Krishna's devotees, this is actually how we're able to become free from this materialistic conception. And we're able to completely become free from all these things that are causing us suffering. This is the actual way by which we can come out of all of these things. People, they try to become free. They try so many different things to finally bring them out of this samsara, this ocean of just this distressful situation that we find ourselves in. But they might try so many different things, but they can't actually come out. And there's a lot to cover in this regard, but in the fourth canto, which I think most devotees here have gone through this section, but in the fourth canto, there's this, in I think maybe the last 5 or 6 chapters, there's this wonderful story of King Prachina Barishat, where he's this king who has everything, and Narada Muni, because he's a great devotee, he wants to see people become free from this unfortunate position of material life that people find themselves in. And as a sadhu, he goes to this king who is bound up by all these different conceptions of material life. And he tells them, and he tells him this allegorical story about his own life, about this king Puranjana, and about how he's so caught up and bound up by his own material body, his own material senses, and how this is actually causing him so much suffering. And we can see that it's the nature of a devotee to have a lot of compassion for these conditioned souls. Externally, Narada Muni, he doesn't really get anything for telling this to this king. But for the personal benefit of the king, Narada Muni, he goes and he speaks to this person, and he breaks down pretty much, those of us who have gone through this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He breaks through and he breaks down every situation by which attachment to this body and senses is causing the king so much suffering. And it's just chapter after chapter after chapter describing this unfortunate position that the king finds himself in. And at the end of all this description by Narada Muni, the king, he's able to wake up. He's actually able to come to this position because Narada Muni, he's so eloquently and elaborately describing the position of the king in this way. And, I could quote so many verses from this chapter, but we have only limited time. But I encourage devotees to read through this section, or at least maybe glance over a bit of the topics discussed in these chapters, because it's very important and it's very relevant specifically to what's being talked about here in this verse today. And it really goes into such deep detail about how we ourselves can become free from all of these problems and all of these conceptions. So these topics of Krishna Katha, these topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, they might seem like very high things. They might seem like things that are very difficult to understand. And it might seem like we're so far away from this level that we hear about and we hear discussed about in the Bhagavatam, or the standard that we see in highly advanced devotees. But the point is made here that even though the demigods, they're unable to see the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord's lotus feet are actually situated within them, right? Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita that he's always seated within everyone's heart. Krishna, he's always there with us, and he's always waiting for us to simply turn to him, and he'll give us all such facilities. It's described in this song by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that when he simply surrendered unto Krishna, he no longer had to worry about anything. He talks about that no matter what situation he'll find himself in, he's always satisfied because he's completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna gives us the promise in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Janma karma chime divyam evam yoveti tatvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naityamam eti sorjuna. That simply by understanding the nature of the Lord's pastimes, by simply hearing over and over again these topics of Krishna Katha, that one will attain the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That by hearing these topics of Krishna Katha, this is the actual medicine for us to go back home, back to Godhead. Krishna promises this in the Bhagavad Gita, that this will be the result of us actually understanding these topics of Krishna Katha. And I'll make this one last point in this regard. Even though it is very easy to understand these topics of Krishna Katha, because one simply has to hear from the pure devotees about these different topics, one simply has to read the books of Srila Prabhupada. It can be hard to come to that level if one is still puffed up by the concept of, I can understand everything by my own knowledge, by my own study, or by my own understanding. And my eyes were sort of open to this point because I was just reading in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, this pastime of Lord Brahma. And when Lord Brahma steals the calves in Krishna Lila, it's described that he's so bewildered by the nature of the Lord's pastimes. And Srila Prabhupada, he describes in the purport that even though the body of Lord Brahma, his whole body is literally made out of intelligence, he's still unable to understand the nature of the Lord's pastimes. And this is because he's trying to understand them by his own knowledge. By his own ideas and by his own conception, he's trying to understand the pastimes of Krishna. And therefore he cannot understand them. So by this process of jnana, by this process of yoga, by this process of karma, people, they aren't actually able to understand this Krishna Katha. Only from the words and the understanding of a pure devotee, one is actually able to understand these topics of Krishna consciousness. And then it actually becomes very easy. Like I was saying, Krishna, he's there, he's situated within our own hearts. The devotees of the Lord, like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they have given us wonderful songs like this by which we're actually able to understand what our position is and how we're able to come out of that position. It's actually made so easy for us if simply we're able to apply ourselves to the process that's given to us by the pure devotees. And we've been so fortunate that we've been given this wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam, by which simply going through this Srimad Bhagavatam, we're able to come to this understanding. Srila Prabhupada, when he first received his 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he said that so many people, they're thinking these books, they're just for distribution. But actually, I've written these books for my disciples to read. And I authorize my disciples to read these books 24 hours a day. Because Srila Prabhupada, he didn't just want us to distribute his books here and there, but he wanted us to distribute these books for our whole lives. And we won't actually be able to do that. We won't actually be able to engage in the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya unless we have this proper understanding of Krishna Katha. And we can easily get that proper understanding if we simply read through the books of Srila Prabhupada. If we make it a point in our day to read Prabhupada's books every day, there's no doubt that we'll come to the proper conception and we'll properly understand the topics of Krishna Katha. And therefore, as Krishna promises, we'll be able to go back home, back to Godhead. So I'll end my class here. Sorry that I went a little over time. If there's any questions, comments, or corrections, I'll take those now. Chandan?
Just like the emphasis on Srila Prabhupada is making here in the purport, one should get rid of the material engagement of the gross and subtle body, which only causes one to continue to condemn life of miseries.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, generally, those things which cause us a lot of misery, sometimes we become disgusted with also.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you don't go on and going and trying again and again. Because, even just like, great philosophers sometimes give examples, like, if someone causes me distress in my life, severe distress, I generally won't associate with them because you despise them. Like, I never want to be with this person. But the same desire and the lorded over mature nature causes us so much distress. But that illusion is so amazing. We think we can enjoy these bodies and other bodies.
Yeah.
And it's quite disgusting, actually. It's like you examine that and you realize, like, you try to understand what's actually being said and what's going on in your life. The fact that you're trying to decorate this body so nicely, enjoy this body, and enjoy the body of others. And then the lording over mentality itself, it's so disgusting. And our acharyas preach that in these songs, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur is preaching that this bodily conception of life is quite disgusting and quite condemnable. And I'm looking at myself, and they're expressing like that, looking and condemning myself, they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But there is talking about us. And so, contemplating upon some of these things, it's like we should really become disgusted with material life because two reasons. One main reason, understanding how actually amazing spiritual life is, first and foremost. Because as Krishna describes a little bit later in that chapter, how the soul is amazing. Mm-hmm. Some see him as amazing, some hear of him as amazing, and how the soul is amazing.
Yeah.
But how this material body, in comparison, there's no comparison, is quite disgusting, actually. One should become disgusted with this material life, disgusted to the desire to lord it over material nature. And Srila Prabhupada's books do that for us because they reveal to us. Hearing from a pure devotee does that. Because you see actually when we are not desiring to lord it over material nature, the quality and the just their saintliness that is there, how satisfied they are, and what kind of position they have compared to where we're at in our life, trying to enjoy different things, enjoy a woman or a man or this and that, look at a woman in an attractive way or a man in this way. It's quite disgusting, actually. Mm-hmm. And so Shukadeva Goswami is quite heavy on that from the beginning.
Yeah.
So we can try to realize that how actually this material body is a disgusting thing. Anybody that's attracted to it is also not very intelligent, and it's quite disgusting. Ourself and whoever else is attracted to this body. It's just this. It's a lot of suffering that causes from that. It's realizing that, and then realizing trying to realize our platform of Krishna consciousness. It's like getting away from this material conception of I and mine, how horrible that is actually, how much suffering it causes us.
Yeah, we can see sort of like the contrast here, right? Prabhupada in this purport, he quotes this, I am everything, which is actually causing us so much distress and suffering. But then we see here in this bhajan by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, talking about Krishna, he says, you are everything to me. And we can see that just taking full shelter of Krishna, it gives us so much more than just freeing from this, this disgusting position that we find ourselves in. So it's really amazing, actually. Abhiru Prabhu?
We've been thinking a lot about this conception of I and mine. We've been hearing about it pretty regularly. Mm-hmm. And the whole conception of like false ego, it's so strong. And I wanted to ask you about how it is that one can actually become free from falling victim to the false ego, because we're given the opportunity to engage in acts of pure devotion like chanting japa, doing kirtan. Okay, you can go out on sankirtan, but the false ego, it's almost like you're standing next to a fire, but you're not even feeling warm, you know? It's like, okay, here's Krishna's holy name, but because my false ego is so strong, it's like I'm just cold even though I'm right next to a fire, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to ask you, like, how is it that we can intentionally become free from this false ego and like, in our daily activities, you know?
Yeah, you know, this false ego, it's actually so troublesome, like you're describing, because it's, you know, it's probably the most subtle of these elements that we are bound by. So even though one might come through so many different levels of Krishna consciousness, this level of false ego, it's seemingly very difficult to overcome. But this whole word false ego, it implies that there's the true ego, there's the real ego. The ego it isn't false and it doesn't not exist, but we have our real position, we have our real eternal position, this Jiva Swarupoy Krishna Nityadas, that our real position is that eternal blissful servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we have to be able to practically identify with that true ego, with that true position that we have. And that'll definitely take some time. It doesn't just happen overnight. And it isn't just that when one starts practicing devotional service that automatically one becomes free from the false ego. But by doing your devotional service with this conception of the true ego, of this conception of that actually I'm not this, you know, everything that I see around me, my family and this whole world that I'm being bound up in, it isn't actually my real home. And that my real nature is to be with Krishna, to be with Krishna's devotees. And by constantly engaging in the process of Krishna consciousness, we gradually come up to that realization because, you know, our taste and our experience, it continues to increase. So in the beginning, it might not be like when one is in kirtan or when one is chanting the rounds or when one is engaging in devotional service, because we still have this such deep-rooted understanding of the false ego. We might not be able to fully experience what's actually there. Like it's being described here that, you know, even though the demigods are unable to see Krishna, Krishna is actually within their own hearts. So just by continually engaging in this process of devotional service, like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he describes this process of Cheto Darpana Marjanam, right? The dirty mirror, it has to be cleansed, but this is a process and it takes some time. And the thing about a mirror is that when you actually clean it, you can see who you actually are, versus when the mirror is dirty, you have all these misunderstandings about your actual nature. So it takes some time, but just by engaging in the process of devotional service, we can understand that we'll eventually come up to that level. Chandan, you have something to add?
Also, Vaishnava general humility is also, they never feel that they're free of that false ego.
Mm-hmm.
But if the whatever shelter you may be under, your authorities, and that they see that you're making advancement and you're going on in Krishna consciousness, that is the sign of assurance. That is like it's natural for like a Vaishnava to feel like, oh man, I'm not making any like my advancement, but then there may be our seniors who are seeing that and encouraging us to go on in devotional service in the way that we are. So then that's like a verification that we're making progress in our spiritual life. Because it's hard to judge, okay, now I'm free of false ego. Yeah. That in itself is, you've fallen into the same thing again. So it's natural for one Vaishnava who makes advancement to feel like that. But then when one's guidance or one's spiritual master is pretty happy with the disciple in his activities, then that's our verification that Krishna consciousness, there's advancement there.
Yeah, also we can practically see in this song by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that all of these things that binds one to this conception of false ego. He says that he's surrendered all of it to the lotus feet of Krishna. So this is the mood and attitude that one has to have, of just surrendering everything to Krishna. Anything else? Mataji's, any questions? All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.